Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining us wherever and whenever you're doing so. There's no accident that you're here. I'm joined today by Adam Hall to discuss his transformational book, Divine Genius, The Unlearning Curve. Adam is formerly a CEO, serial entrepreneur, and real estate developer who is now a committed researcher of the mind and consciousness, a trained shaman, speaker, and teacher of A Course in Miracles. He's the founder of Earthkeeper Alliance, dedicated to conserving the planet for future generations. Adam, thank you so much for being here and for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Travis. It's wonderful to be here with you and all your listeners today. I'm honored and look forward to sharing and exploring with you.
Thank you. And I know you get asked this a lot, and it was part of my original plan about why authors write a book at any given time. But you say the book wrote you, not you wrote it, and that your job was to be alive in real time in your own conscious evolution. What does that mean?
Well, as a fledgling writer many years ago, before I wrote my first book, The Earthkeeper, Undeveloping the Future, I tried to write a book. But you're looking at a guy that did not pass remedial English when he went to school up at Berkeley the first year he was there. So I was, for all you writers out there, maybe this is a bit of a way to approach what we would just refer to as that creative muse. And so what I found is that I was kind of getting in the way of thinking that I should, write this and this kind of thing happened. And what happened for me was I just began to really sit in nature and listen. And then along in that listening, in that presencing, in that grounding, in that frequency and vibration, if that makes sense, the voice of the muse began to speak and spoke in the terms of the divine genius within myself, and that of my interconnectivity as a genius to this greater genius of the universe. Some may call that the Buddha mind, the Christ mind, the God mind, whatever that higher mind. In science, we refer to it, of course, as the quantum field. And so this has been the journey to just come into a presencing within myself so I could listen to the muse that was coming through me, that was speaking through me. And in that journey began the writing of this manuscript, which took place in the deserts of Mexico, in the Sonoras, in the wild, and also into Patagonia and Argentina, into those two countries, including Chile. So it was a marvelous journey into grounding and writing this book, and that's how it emerged, and that's how I birthed it. So thank you for that. I appreciate the question.
Welcome. It's really a wonderful experience to read and an adventure, because that's very clear in your writing about the adventuresome nature. And I can relate a lot to that in my own life. And in my writing, I first had the perspective that I needed to tell a good story in my memoir that I'm writing now. And it became very clear to me that it wasn't that I wanted to write a good story, but I wanted to write my story well. So that became an important component of my writing and has remained true since my accident and returned to writing very recently. And it'll be very important that I continue on in that and want to. So in your book, Divine Genius, it includes a story of your quest in Peru for what came to be known as the Holy Grail, the answer to the question, can I get out of this lifetime alive? And what does that mean for listeners who might be curious?
Well, I first of all want to honor you as a writer and your muse, and then happy to answer the question about that quest for the Holy Grail and the idea of adventure. But thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important for writers or people that want to write it's about you. You're not writing for the audience. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
I learned along the way that it's none of my business what other people think of me.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
this is all about how you can share your journey and your story, because everybody has a very powerful story and journey. And in that journey are the gems and the wisdom that's
Mhm.
needed to really uplift and inspire the world today. So thank you for that. And, my journey, that proverbial, the seeker that where I began back in when I was 42, which was back in 2003, 2004, I began to ask the questions, even though I seemingly was living this amazing life. And, but something was missing. It was kind of Tums in the morning and tequila at night. And,
Mm.
even though I had a beautiful family, but something was amiss. And I just said, oh my God, what is that? And what's this look like? So I did a proverbial breakdown to break through, so to speak, that dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call that
Yeah.
transitional period. And we all are going through powerful period of transformation. I think we would agree on that. Death and rebirth. So
Mhm.
I began to
Phoenix.
take that path, the hero's path. And for women, it's the heroine's path. We are the hero or heroine of our life's journey. And who, if we don't show up for ourselves and our heart and our soul, then who the
Mhm.
heck is going to do it? And it's not out in the world, as you know, Travis, from your journey, and many of you know yourself. So I begin that quest. And, that quest was first initially very unknown
Mhm.
and scary as hell. And, a lot of fear in my life, pain and difficulty in letting go of life as I knew it. I wanted to hold on, of course. But the quest that called me really began with what I share in the introduction to the book, Divine Genius, the Unlearning Curve, was this question: can you get out of this lifetime alive? And that question, the implications, I should say, of that question are profound. Because
Mhm.
if you find the answer, which I did, and that answer is yes, you can get out of this lifetime alive. That's why it became the subject of my book, and a way for people to get out of this lifetime alive. I offer that in the book. And it began the quest to find out for myself. I mean, we got a lot of information and a lot
Mhm.
of books, and you can do all this stuff, guru, whatever it is for you, but it doesn't mean a hill of beans. It doesn't mean shit, really, because until we make it our own experience, then it's not real. Then it's not knowledge. It's just
Mhm.
information, if you know what I mean. So I
Yeah.
begin that journey to answer that question. Can I get out of this lifetime alive? And in the journey of doing that, it wasn't just a matter of like coming to my last breath and going, oh, wait a second. It was about getting out of this lifetime alive right now, not
Yeah.
tomorrow. And this is key, right now. So we all are offered that opportunity to take that quest, the quest, what we often have called the quest for the Holy Grail, the quest
Mhm.
that allows us to move beyond our identity and idea of separate, ego, mortal self, and into a greater knowing of the totality of who I was. And that was the quest. And it
Mm.
was quite a ride. And I share it, and it's fully in the book.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm
Yes.
just I got chills at one point when you were talking because of the resonance in my third eye coming in energetically, feeling that very fully in my body, which is one of the ways that I process in this world. And I can't remember exactly what I was going to comment on in that, or what I was thinking or what you were saying that specifically emoted that in my body, but it's very important to me to provide the awareness for people in my life that can help them, motivate them, inspire them, because people are now telling me how inspirational I am continuing to be in my life. And I never thought I was inspirational. And when my editor first suggested that I change course from the book that I had originally written to write a memoir, I first thought, I'm not old enough to write a memoir, because wouldn't that be like the last rites of someone who was on their way out? And she said, but you have such important wisdom and stories to share, that it's important to do that. To your comment about people having their own stories, because I have mine that people can be inspired by. And so it is what it is. But yours was very fascinating and interesting to me to read. And there were 4 threads that were distinct and interwoven: your journey in Peru in 2012, backstories of your life experiences as including your struggles in your personal relationships and business, and then the 13 wisdom teachings from from the ascended master men, and the reader who will experience the teachings in the book in their own unique and personal way, which is very powerful for people. And to be clear, you refer to men in capital letters as distinguished in a term used in reference to the ascended master and ascended master, not the patriarchal religion that are practiced around the world.
Yes, that's correct. And thank you for sharing and bringing forth those kind of 4 key pillars and the idea of story. And I think, I love that your editor's supporting you and your evolution of a memoir. And, the power, what I have found is that in writing our stories is not simply the uncovering of the genius within ourselves that can occur, but the wisdom that comes along with that. And so the wisdom of who you are will emerges more greatly. I found that in my particular journey. And what's being asked, I think, of us as in the individual world, as well as in the collective world right now, Travis, is that we're being asked to write a new story. A new story of our humanity, and the new story begins with you and I. Begins with each of us. So the journey of writing and sharing, even if it's musing within your own journals, is a journey that is an empowerment that I found, that where not only does your wisdom and your genius emerge, but ultimately the ability to navigate through the coming period of time, which is where we're going to be writing new stories in real time, just not on paper, but out actually in a collaborative experience like you and I are having right now. And so I just want to emphasize that, because you brought up something that's so important for each of us right now as we navigate through these really difficult and seemingly challenging times. And when I set out to write The Divine Genius, The Unlearning Curve, it was a bit of a conundrum, so to speak, because it wasn't just a linear piece of work where it takes a piece of say, if you're writing a memoir
chronologically
from A to B. This is an arc of a bridging of one soul's journey from a 1.0 version, Adam 1.0, into a 2.0 version. And in the journey of evolution, I'm no different than anybody, and I'm certainly not more special in any way. It's not better or worse, but there's an arc of our evolution, and the ARC invites us to be conscious in the evolutionary experience. In other words, do we want to just have the old 1.0 way of allowing life to happen to us? You know, that classic victim, perpetrator, rescuer mentality.
Mhm.
Or do we really want to reclaim our power and our truth of who we are and choose a way to move beyond that separation? Making sense? Follow
Yeah,
me? Because
absolutely.
when we make this choice, nobody has taken away our choice. Only us, only ourselves give up our choice. We surrender our power. We surrender our
Mhm.
greatness.
Which classes do you wish to put on to view your life?
Exactly. So that journey, it led me to, share in a way that I hadn't quite shared, because those 4 pillars, the pillar of personal experience,
Mhm.
the what's going on every day. In other words, about being transparent. I mean, just being authentic, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on, and I got a lot of great challenges. And at the same time, I'm consciously evolving. I'm consciously in the movement to move into, well, my authentic self, my genius
Mhm.
self, as I referred to it as. And so I'm sharing that journey. And then I'm sharing that, of course, is in a physical, emotional, and psychological level. And then I'm moving over into an interior experience, what is going on for me energetically within myself. And of course, within ourselves is the real action. That's the playing
Mhm.
field.
The
And that's what we
magic.
try to often avoid. But when we're engaging in the inner plane, then we're engaging in quantum transformation. We're
Mhm.
engaging in a way that we can really leap or ascend into the most authentic place, which is the genius within each of us. Everybody has that. So that's when I start to share the stories around men and working in deep meditation and really spending 2-3 hours sometimes in this journey of being present to receive the gifts of men, this wise master, this wise one that comes, the name comes from the Mayan archetype, men, which is the eagle, the wise one.
Mhm.
And there's a picture of that on the cover of my book. And it just right there is the eagle. And the eagle is one that where we fly free from the cages of our own old 1.0 version. Are you with me?
Mhm.
So we're
Yeah.
flying free with that. So that's the second pillar in the book, is that engagement with men, first being my own personal journeys. And then the third piece is the piece that where I received these powerful wisdom teachings, these 13 universal wisdom teachings, that I lay down a step-by-step map for the reader to begin that journey to free themselves from the old 1.0 separateness of ego and into the 2.0 version of yourself, the authentic
Mhm.
part of yourself. And there's a process to do that, the genius process. It's there. It's not easy. It takes work. But in truth, it's actually very simple, because just think, it's like going from, A to B to C to D. And that's how it's laid
Mhm.
out. And it takes some work and practice. But the wisdom teachings, as a third pillar of this book, invites the reader, who is the fourth pillar. We have 4 pillars,
Mhm.
invites the reader to engage in their own transformation in real time as a co-creator of their life, first saying, life's happening to me. There's nothing I
Mhm.
can do about it. I'm not good enough. Man, that's a bunch of BS. So this is
Mhm.
about stepping up like that. So that's a great question. I appreciate looking at those 4 pillars. Hopefully that was clear enough where
Yeah,
they
it
can
was
understand.
absolutely. And life happens for us, not to us.
Bravo.
And I've often seen spirits surrounding someone that I'm working on, and even loved ones in spirit that show me that they're wearing pom-poms and put on fighter gloves because they're out on there on the other side cheering the people on and helping to navigate their lives in a way that is for their benefit. And people don't often completely believe that. Even if they understand it, they might not believe it fully in their heart. And it's funny that you mentioned the concept of 2.0, Adam 2.0, because in my recent accident, I was hospitalized for 4 months and was in a coma for 6 weeks. And I had to relearn essentially how to do everything, how to function in a human body again, and how to orient myself to this dimension. It wasn't easy. And so I sat there in learning and in thought when I realized I had thought, and sometimes full awareness of what was going on without function was remarkable. And I often have said, I wonder what Trav 2.0 would be, what my next adventure will look like, since I already have done a lot of the spiritual work. Now, having this other more advanced sort of viewpoint on life, given my current experiences, we'll see what's to come, because I know that there's a reason that I stayed. I'm not done. There's more work to do here, and it'll reveal itself in time through others. And the next thing is that's been shown to me is my story is ready to be told. So I've been going back to that. So that's it. So what are the wisdom teachings?
Well, first of all, so happy you're still here with us.
Thank you.
Your courage inspires me, Travis. And yes, Spirit has a plan for you.
Mhm.
It's commensurate with what you went through, no doubt.
Mhm.
And so it's big. And it's funny how we, like you said, life happens for us. That's a key life experience. It either is going to happen to us, or we're going to control it. We got to control everything,
Yeah.
or life's going to happen for us. Also, life happens through us. But what you're sharing in the wisdom is, as life is happening for you and you're embracing the gratitude and the gift of your experience, it's extraordinary. So I honor you, brother.
Thank you.
I honor that path, and hold you in the greatest light and the greatest healing. And as you continue to emerge through the stuff, but it sounds like you got the real hard stuff out of the way. now you're gonna
Literally
now
hard
you're
stuff.
gonna,
3,
yeah.
4 fall.
Yeah, now you're gonna get the good stuff. Anyway, the wisdom teachings are 13 wisdom teachings. They're universal wisdom teachings. In other words, these are teachings that have been present throughout the ages. And so they're ancient in their nature, but they're very, as I receive them in a new way, they're applicable today, but many of them have come forth as a new way forward for those of us that are feeling stuck in that 1.0 version. I think you probably be the first to say with us, you wouldn't wish any experience like you had on anybody. This is not about being forced, and certainly not suggesting that for you, into a place of your soul's highest calling. This is about saying yes to your heart and soul now, folks. It's about saying right there and stepping in. And these wisdom teachings are a map, these 13 stepping stones into your liberation in 2.0, your sovereignty from old way of thinking, the old world we live in. And it's not about changing the world. It's about embracing the depth of who you already are. And these 13 teachings are as follows. And the first is the key you can't miss any of these steps. And I
Yeah, I
wrote
was
them
going
in
to
a
ask you
very,
about that. The first is known as the most important. So
it is,
I
and
was going to
that's,
ask you next
and exactly, and
about
I
that.
can just touch in the 13, but we'll
Yeah.
go, I think we'll focus on the first one
Yeah.
with the limited amount of time we have. But the first one is true forgiveness. The second one is true purpose.
Mm.
Next, we look at death, which is transformation, death and rebirth.
Yeah.
We look at the life force, the chi that moves through us. We want to tap chi. Those first four make up the foundation of how we can quantum leap into our greatest
Like a house.
potential. Then we move into a place of peace. We move into love. We move into function, the highest functioning expression of who we are in this beautiful machine. Then we step into a place of our destiny. And then we look at the wisdom of divine doing and divine being. Then we move into the descent. We ascend, but then we are met by the divine. So then we move into what's called involution, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, as compared to evolution, where we're ascending, involution coming together down to meet us. So that is involution, the descent of the divine. And then we speak into the evolutionary connection between the two. And lastly, into the unification, the unity of our whole being, all our four bodies, physical body, emotional body, mental body, spiritual body, those four bodies becoming into union with the quantum field, coming into union with God, if that's how you like to refer to that as. So these are powerful teachings that are game changing at a time where we got to have a lot of game to navigate through this next period, no doubt about it. And the first question, the reference, if you'd like, I can touch upon forgiveness if you'd like me to do that.
Yes, please do.
Nothing more important than the practice of true forgiveness. Now, I didn't say nothing more important than the practice of forgiveness. I shared true forgiveness.
Authentic.
So when we think of forgiveness, we think in terms of somebody did something to us. And I want to just pause for a minute. This is not to be de minimis or set aside anybody that's going through something right now that's been very painful or very abusive
or
in
ongoing.
any way. It's just, I want to honor those that are having, and this is not about discarding it. This is not about ignoring it. It's quite the contrary. It's about embracing it and having it work to free you from your past and these stories. So with that said, we think in terms of that person's guilty. We judge them for their guilt. We judge them for what they did. And we decide in that process that we're the victim. They are the perpetrator. Or maybe we're perpetrators and that's how we come. And we also want to rescue people. This is the same dynamic that keeps us locked in the separateness of our ego mindset, in the 1.0 of which we are only engaging in a life of that's just fearful. So who in their right mind would want to have a person or a place or something dictate their entire life, how they think and what they do in their life based upon a past experience? Not me. But guess what? We all do this at some point in time.
The trauma
And
lives
the
in our
idea
system
is,
somewhere.
let's free ourselves of that story. And the challenge is, we can't free the story from the place we created the story. In other words, if the problem exists, this is classic Einstein, can't solve the problem from the place the problem was created. So how do we do that? Forgiveness, oh, I forgive them, it's okay. That doesn't free us from that story. So here's what I offer in Divine Genius, the unlearning curve. It's about unlearning that process of forgiveness that we don't, and
The
embracing true
dichotomy.
forgiveness, because
Yeah.
it's actually a simple idea. It's a simple practice. And it begins with forgiving ourselves. And we forgive ourselves not for, Travis, what happened. We forgive ourselves for what did not happen. And what did not happen was we err, we forget that we're connected with other human beings. Putting aside the story, putting aside their gender, putting aside their race, putting all that aside, we're all human beings. We all have this presence of life within us, our heart. And to begin by recognizing that in our judgment and our feelings of guilt, even if they're unconscious, that we erred. We forgot in our connection with spirit, of our oneness with ourselves and our God, or whatever you want to call it, and an other being. And when we come to that place, there's only love. And in the presence of that love, of that interconnection, we're able to move beyond the event. We have to go through it. A lot of us like to bypass with our pathologies. You know, I did a lot of drinking, or whatever that is for you. That's not going to do it. That's just going to kill you. And it's not, that's going to, you want to go straight through it. And, and that's why we're here, to practice true forgiveness, so that we can get to the other side of that event or events that control our futures past. We're living in the future from our past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I love that you first started out by forgiveness of self, because I often find that people are self-critical of themselves for continuing in a relationship that doesn't serve them, for misplacing themselves, and they sit and end up punching themselves in the face energetically. And when I say to them, you need to forgive, and they say, oh, I've already forgiven them, they're no longer in my life. And I say, forgive yourself. What would it feel like if you forgave yourself fully and completely, authentically? What would you tell a best friend who came to you with this problem? And so that forgiveness is such an incredibly powerful tool. And I've experienced times when I had to forgive for an apology I never received. And that was an important process point that I had to do, because I didn't have the person in my life anymore, because they had a therapeutic value to me, and they didn't come through with a promised thing. And I was upset by that. And I could have gone back to my old personality and been vindictive or judgmental, and self-righteousness can come into this perspective as well, because some people really feel the need to be vindicated with whatever event was wrong. And I realized I needed to fully forgive her, and she wasn't going to apologize. And I needed to let her know that I had forgiven her, and do it in myself. So I realized that I was the one suffering, and I needed to be free. And I did that. And I then was able to fully complete that circle of that process. So I would agree that forgiveness is so valuable. And you talk about, the subtitle of the book is The Unlearning Curve, as opposed to what's commonly understood in education as the learning curve is somewhat steep. And for some people that remains true regardless of whatever subject, politics, environment, or whatever. Some people are just not there. And it's a powerful metaphor, and it references the unpacking of things that we identify that hold us back from the wisdom and divine truth that you present. What are some things that you experienced or discovered that need to be unlearned?
Well, unlearning is compared to learning can actually be a very easy process. And let me share with you the challenge of the journey and what led me to doing a lot of the hard work for others. Of course, that was my soul's journey, but can certainly save a lot of time, energy, and focus, and perhaps heartache and pain. And the first and foremost thing that unlearning supports is that we do not need to look or experience anything in our outer world. In other words, as a seeker, when I was doing that, I was seeking teachings and readings and all these various things. That's great. That's full of
You need the answer, and the answer's out there somewhere, and I'm going to look for it.
Exactly. And of course, that is information, and that does have knowledge. But again, without our own personal experience, it doesn't mean a hill of beans, and we can't apply it in our life. So the idea of unlearning in my life began with a journey of shame. Begin with not feeling that I was worthy to be loved in my life. And that journey began with a sense of being abandoned in the relationship with my parents. They didn't do anything wrong. I'm most certainly not a victim of that circumstance. As a matter of fact, that circumstance was the gift of what my soul came into this world to experience. So that experience and that difficulty and challenges of feeling unworthy and not accepted would set me free into the truth of who I am. So when I begin to unlearn those thoughts, those emotions of being left, those ideas that I need to fight for everything I need to get in the world. This can be difficult, especially for men, and it was difficult for me as a man. And I didn't have a role model really to show up for this. And I needed to really show up for myself. So unlearning those feelings of abandonment, unlearning those feelings of unworthiness and shame that I'm not good enough to have the treasure trove of unconditional love and all that it brings in my life. There's more, but that was the key piece. And the idea of unlearning is not about what is need comes from out here, but what each of us has right now in our lives, and to reclaim our power and our truth, to unlearn the thought and the thought system that thinks the thought of separation. This is this idea of ego. It's this idea that we're individuated away from each other, from nature, from the universe, from God, if you want, you will. Mm-hmm. And this is clear that this is the place where the problem exists that creates our pain, suffering, misery, and a whole lot more. That's the problem. And the solution is seeing and experiencing that in your consciousness, that is the problem, and deciding I do not want to choose for that thought system, to unlearn that thought system. Because we don't need to learn anything in regard to our authentic nature, our brilliance. It has been given. It's just been closed off. We've cloaked it away. We've hid it and buried it deep within our own sense of our feelings. Our soul is yearning to be freed of that as a life experience. We can do that by unlearning the thought system of this idea that we're separate. That's insane. We're not separate from the universe. We're not separate from nature. We're not separate from each other. That's just insanity. And it emerged from just a simple thought that we could be, because we have free will. Travis, we could be freed of our God nature. We could free ourselves from that. And we made the choice and had the thought, and that became the ego, and that became the collective ego, and that became the world that we built. It's that simple. It's that simple. So the idea of the divine genius, the unlearning curve, shares a process where you can move down these 13 steps along those 13 wisdom teachings, and you can focus on that problem. It's not a matter of getting anything. It's all been given. It's a matter of letting go of all that no longer serves us. It's as straightforward as that. And that should hopefully give you some idea of that journey and that process.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Yes,
welcome, Travis.
I do understand that conceptually and in my own experiences as I've worked through my own identities and projectedness of who I thought I was before the accident came really clear to me after that. I had this identity with my ego that needed to be released and was released. So, I just had a lot of time as I was healing initially and before I was discharged, while I was still learning to walk, and I'll still have more surgeries to go. In fact, I have one later this week to go in for. I had a lot of time of introspection and not extra, other than distractions with regular nurse visits, and other times I needed to do whatever it is I needed to do, and resetting my life back. It was essentially a do-over from nothing. I had nothing other than awareness. So my whole identity needed to be rebuilt, and it was an inside job. And it goes to the point that you made in your book about, and earlier this show, about involution versus evolution. And am I catching on to the concept of involution when I talked about my experiences in the thought process that I went through before, while I was in the hospital and going through what I was experiencing? I think I'm cutting out. I'm not hearing anything.
Well, most certainly, to your question about catching on about involution, the answer is yes. And it's really the focus is, what I'm hearing more deeply is a clearing of energetic energy that is emerged through this accident that you have, and this experience that you're going on. And by the way, all the best to you for your coming surgery.
Thank you.
And maybe many of those other surgeries, maybe they won't be needed as you think, but first things first, I
One at a time.
sending you blessings in light, dear brother. But in the journey really is what I'm hearing is a lot of clearing and a lot of unlearning, and which is now you may be beginning to start to feel the penetration, which is involution. It's a penetrating force. And the opening that I found through my own journey of letting go of stories and imprintings energetically of my unworthiness and shame and sense of abandonment, for example, creates an opening. It kind of open myself to allow the penetration and the involution, the descent of the divine to come into the biofield, our biological field of our bodies and our psychological states and mental states, to come in and penetrate into the depths of who we are. And it's there, and that's what it wants to do as the divine genius. That's what that is. That's love. That's light.
Mhm.
It's light. That's love. Scientifically, it's light, and light carries energy, and the benevolence of that light is benevolent. And in the benevolence of that light, we're really re-engaging and relearning our bodies and relearning our sense of our own feel of our life experience. And that's an activation of our DNA, our cellular body. Your cellular body, no doubt, it looks radically different than what it did before.
I can only imagine, because I can't see it.
We're old, we grow new bodies every 7 years. It's remarkable. Whether we're actually engaging and doing that in our own wellness is a whole nother story, because we're not. We're actually just destroying the body. And what I'm hearing is there's a fabulous invitation for you, and the miracle of you, to evolve into a greater opening, a greater sense of transcendence, sense where that light field, that involutionary force of the divine genius, of love, of God's love, can penetrate further in. So I sense that that's it. You're in that journey, and I honor you rather for that, and good on you, because you're tuning in and you're paying attention, because if you weren't, we wouldn't be talking right now, most likely.
Yeah,
So
I'm
this is
sure that
great.
wouldn't be the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I do have a little bit more time today if you have any further questions. Otherwise, I'm going to have to just check in on some other things. And
Okay, thank you so
been
much.
great to
I'm
be here
really
with you.
honored to have you, and we could go on with some of the information that you share about
Let's
your
do that.
5-step process.
Yeah, let's
because
do it another time.
Yeah, let's do that
Call
another
me,
time about the process.
send me a note, and when I see you next time, we'll continue that journey. I'm here for you, and I feel you. And if anybody wants to reach me, you can get me at adamhall.solutions. Adamhall.solutions. I'm giving and offering a free ebook, The Little Book of Genius for Abundance. Let's end lack in
Oh,
our lives.
yay.
Go to their
That's
website and you
exciting.
can get that for free. And if you like to check out the book, I really would appreciate the support. You can do that at Amazon worldwide. Appreciate you. Blessings.
Yeah, thank you, brother. It's an honor and privilege to share space with you.
Yes.
And thank you so much for being here with us, sharing your work and these teachings with our audience today. And thank you all for your participation in watching and listening. It's no accident that you're here. There was something that drew you
Yes.
to participate, and I'm honored that you did so, and appreciative. Thank you
Bless
so
you.
much.
Bless you. Be well, everyone. Be safe. Godspeed.
All right.